All right, so let's talk about what might just be the next big leap for AI. It's called Agentic RAG. Now, this is a whole new way of thinking about AI that aims to make it less like a kind of forgetful assistant and more like an intelligent partner you can actually count on. Okay, let's get into it.
You've probably been there, right? You ask an AI a question, and it fires back this super confident answer that's, well, completely wrong. Or maybe it's outdated or just plain weird. This is what we call hallucination, and it happens because most AI is trained on a static snapshot of the internet. But what if it could actually think for itself? What if it could check its own sources and correct its own mistakes before it ever gives you an answer?
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down AI's big problem with facts. Then, we'll introduce this idea of the AI agent. After that, we'll peek inside its head to see how it thinks and acts. We'll also look at how it's already changing industries. And finally, we'll talk about the new challenges that come with all this new power. Okay, let's start at the beginning. You see, the first big attempt to fix AI's fact-checking problem was a technology called Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or RAG for short. It was a great idea, a really solid first step, but as you're about to see, it had some serious limitations. The best way to get this is with an analogy. Think of traditional RAG as a simple assistant. You give it a task, it goes to one single file cabinet, grabs a file, and comes back with an answer. It's a rigid, one-way street, just retrieve, then generate. Agentic RAG, on the other hand, is more like a project manager. It actually thinks about the problem, uses a whole bunch of different tools to gather info, and then, this is key, it checks its own work along the way. It's not a straight line, it's a dynamic loop. And you can see where that simple assistant model falls apart, right? It gets totally stuck on complex questions that need multiple steps to solve. But most importantly, it has absolutely no way to judge if the information it found is any good. It just grabs whatever it finds and runs with it, which, is why we often get those fragmented or just plain useless answers. So if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where the whole concept of an AI agent completely changes the game. It's a really fundamental shift in how we build these systems. We're moving from just having a simple tool to creating an autonomous problem solver. So the key takeaway here is that Agentic RAG isn't just a small upgrade. It actually embeds an autonomous agent, think of it as a little piece of software that can make its own decisions, right into the core process. And this is what gives the AI the power to plan its approach, use a bunch of different tools, and, most importantly, check its own work. And this quote from the research just nails it. The old systems lacked self-awareness. They couldn't stop and ask themselves, hey, is this information I found actually useful? Is it even complete? They were just passive summarizers, kind of like a photocopier. But by putting an agent in the driver's seat, the system gets a kind of self-awareness. It can actually reason about the task itself. It stops being a parrot that just repeats what it finds and becomes more like a detective that's actively hunting for the truth and then validating it. It becomes a proactive problem solver. So, how does an agent actually think? What's going on under the hood? Well, it all comes down to this dynamic loop of reasoning and taking action. This is basically the agent's brain in action. It's a loop that's often called REACT, which stands for reason and act. So first, the agent looks at your request and makes a plan. Then, it picks the right tool for that specific job and actually uses it. Now, this next part is absolutely critical. It then observes the result and asks, did that work? Is this information any good? If the answer is no, it loops right back and tries again, maybe with a different tool or a new approach, until it's finally confident that it has a solid answer. And this is where things get really cool. See, traditional RAG was stuck with just one tool, its internal library of documents. An agent, though, sees that library as just one tool in a whole toolkit. It can also do a live web search for the latest news. It can plug into a company's internal Slack to find project details, or it can even just use a calculator for a simple math problem. It picks the best tool for the job. And honestly, this ability to self-correct is the secret sauce. It's what really builds trust. If the first search for information comes back weak or totally irrelevant, the agent doesn't just give up and serve you a bad answer. It recognizes that failure, refines its approach, and tries again. It's this try and try again process that dramatically improves the final quality of the answer. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually mean in the real world? Well, this is where we see simple bots starting to evolve into what you could pretty much call digital workers. Let's take a super high-stakes field like healthcare. One study found that Agentic RAG improved the accuracy of radiology quality assurance by 5%. Now, 5% might not sound like a lot, but in clinical decision-making, a 5% jump in reliability is massive. It's the difference between an interesting science experiment and a tool that a doctor can actually trust with a patient. And in the business world, the impact is just as huge. Some early adopters have seen up to a 40% increase in automating complex knowledge tasks. We're not talking about simple chatbots answering basic questions anymore. We're talking about systems that can handle these really complicated multi-step workflows that used to need a human expert. And this is popping up everywhere. In finance, you've got agents automating compliance checks by constantly scanning regulatory documents. In customer support, they're handling tricky escalations by pulling up policy manuals and customer history on the fly. They're even generating comprehensive legal briefs, making sure every single claim is backed by a valid, cited source. It's pretty incredible. But, as with any powerful new technology, this increased intelligence doesn't exactly come for free. It brings a whole new set of trade-offs and challenges to the table that we have to be really careful about. The first and most obvious trade-off is performance. That whole think, act, correct loop, it takes time and a lot of processing power. Every single step in that loop can involve another call to a large language model, which adds delay and, of course, cost. So for a really simple question, traditional RAG might actually be faster and cheaper. This extra intelligence comes at a price. This slide lays it out pretty clearly. You've got traditional RAG, which is fast but simple. Then there's a single agent system, which adds a bit of a delay but can handle more complex stuff. And then you have multi-agent systems, where you have a whole team of specialized agents working together, which are by far the most powerful and scalable, but also the slowest, most complex, and most expensive to run. And it's not just about performance. There are new risks we have to think about. What if an agent makes a small error in its reasoning and then uses that bad conclusion to make its next decision? That's how errors can compound and spiral. Or in a system with multiple agents, what if one flawed agent misleads the entire team? That's a coordination failure. And because these agents can make hundreds of decisions a second, it can become almost impossible for a human to trace back how a final answer was reached, which is a huge oversight challenge. So here's the big takeaway. Agentic RAG really marks the moment that AI starts to mature. It's moving beyond being just a simple information retrieval tool to becoming a genuine problem-solving partner. But with that maturity comes responsibility. We have to shift our focus from just building these systems to actively managing their complexity, their cost, and all the new risks they bring. And all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. As these AI agents become more and more capable of acting on their own, of thinking and planning and self-correcting without our direct input, it really forces us to ask, who or what is ultimately in charge?